Why most rehabs fail. So I had this client, I'm going to call him O for anonymity. And we've trained together for about 3.5 years. So when we first met, he was working with a physio. He's worked with a couple of physios over the years. And he had patella pain, patella tendon pain, patella tendinopathy, whatever you want to call it, anterior knee pain. He had it while running, while walking, and generally it was pretty chronic throughout the day. So he had it over the weeks. And at the time, we'd just met, so I was just doing his upper body training. He started to work with the physio, getting stronger, building up his quad, hamstring, glute, calf strength in the gym and doing particular exercises for stuff like that. So doing things like leg extensions, split squats, Bulgarian split squats, and eventually building into plyometrics. Over time, we built trust and I started training his legs as well. And this was a few years back, so I still knew absolutely nothing. I know a little bit more now, but there's still a big hill to climb with knowledge. Back in those days, I was pretty aligned with his physio. You got to get these muscles stronger. You got to get that tendon stronger. And that's how you get stronger, or like better at absorbing and releasing energy, I should say, with regards to the tendon. And that is how you get a good solution. That's how you kind of get him back to running. But the pain persisted. So we went after this traditional approach. Get the muscles stronger, more capable, better at producing force. Get that tendon good at accepting and releasing force. Get it good at doing that faster, and then get it better at doing that repeatedly. So what that would look like is initially just doing things like isometric, so it can kind of take load in and out and transfer it through the muscles, and then building up to more dynamic movements such as split squats, and then eventually increasing the velocity of tasks, so doing things like pogos, plyometrics, so that tendon gets a little bit more work at higher rates. That didn't work. So that traditional approach, we were just going after the symptoms and trying to address the knee by strengthening and improving the quality of the tendon. That didn't work. Now, it took me a long time and a lot of frustration to figure out why, and a lot of learning to understand why. And with that case, what actually eventually did get us good outcomes was addressing the relationship between the bones, aka like the tibia, the femur, and how they move. So early on, we didn't address that. So I would regard this as, the problem was we were addressing the tissues around the knee, but we weren't addressing the biomechanics of how the system was accepting force and producing force. So we were simply trying to get the system better at producing force and accepting force, as opposed to understanding how it was accepting and producing that force. Now, that's a huge difference. Absolutely huge difference. It's easy for gym number to go up. It's harder to understand what is making that gym number go up and how is that gym number going up. The most obvious example is, so say you're training, you're doing back squats, and each week you're adding 5 kilos and things are getting better. The first 4 weeks, the squats look identical. But then you see someone do a PR attempt, a personal best attempt, and you see like their spine drive forward and they're really grinding, knees collapse in, but they make the lift. So programming wise, before I would just write down, all right, they made the lift. It was a little bit questionable, but how they made that lift is very different to how they made it the weeks before. So their system solved for getting stronger and gym number go up, but it didn't solve it in a way that kind of maintained, I would say, the body's ability to produce that force using the targeted tissues. So at the end, you see these grindy reps and every single part of that body is trying to get that weight up. and you might use more of your lower back. You might ram the joints together to drive the force because the quads can't handle it or the glutes can't handle it, and they've kind of run out of capacity. So the rest of the system starts solving to try and stand up in the squat. Well, that's kind of the same thing with this rehab. So we just tried to get him stronger and more capable. But the issue was the relationship with his femur and his tibia weren't doing the way they were behaving, the tibia and the femur relative to one another, meant that energy couldn't transfer through those joints in a way that it didn't stagnate, it didn't keep hitting the patellar tendon, because that just kept giving him pain. So as soon as we taught his tibia to internally rotate relative to his distal femur, energy could travel up through the system and his patellar tendinopathy went away. Now that's a very weird way to look at this. That was just one issue with that guy. So as opposed to just getting someone stronger, we addressed how they were getting stronger and that next level of thought with regards to the biomechanics. So you can get someone stronger until the cows come home. But if you don't address how they're producing that force or accepting that force, you're going to have problems. This is where this systemic approach comes in. I think we look at our assessments and our KPIs of gym strength or jump height without looking at how the body is behaving or how that individual is working and producing that force in the first place. And the error with that is, well, our KPIs are wrong. What we're chasing is incorrect. And this is the hardest thing. Like, you're dealing with a complex dynamic system, being a human being, and you are testing something that has a million factors going into it that can produce the outcome. And you're not measuring the factors going into that outcome. So this is why a better solution to getting after root causes is a better assessment. Now, if you understand how the different joints are able to move relative to one another, and you have an idea of how the whole system is behaving generally to produce and accept force while doing various activities, you then can get pinned down the root cause. With this guy, it was the relationship between the tibia and the femur, getting those things to move relative to one another as you put force into the ground. And that tendon finally gets a bit of space and energy can propagate into the system and drive you forward. Understanding how the body's behaving better then leads you to better exercise selection or intervention selection. So for example, with this guy, the assessment was simple. The knee hurts. And then our KPI was get quad, hamstring, glute, calf stronger. Exercises along there, chipping away at those tasks, successfully getting stronger. You could argue we were successful with our rehab, but the symptoms were still there. We didn't solve the problem. We just gave him more capabilities within that behavior's current system. As opposed, and that was beneficial, right? Like, he's now stronger as well as having a better biomechanics through the knee with regards to better, no symptoms. He can run, he can do whatever he wants with that knee. So why most rehabs fail, it goes back to this poorer understanding of biomechanics. So they get the problem. The problem is the pain. Like, no one's going to come in with knee pain and going to be happy if you're like addressing their shoulder or something like that. They are going out, they've got the right problem per se. It's the knee pain. But then assessing why that is a problem is generally the biggest issue. Once you've got that good quality assessment, then you can choose a better intervention and exercise. And it also gives you a better KPI to chase. Now, those are the things that differentiate a very good quality rehab where you get after these root cause symptoms, these root causes to the problem, and get people back performing to a higher level. You have to have this retest. So initially, when we figured out, oh, this tibia is not IRing. So just for your point of reference as well, when you take a step forward in walking, the tibia should internally rotate. That proximal tibia just below the knee should internally rotate to accept force in a relative manner. So you're not jamming the joints together. What that would look like if you didn't have that relative motion when someone's walking or squatting, the knee could fall in, the knee could fall out. So the knee doesn't like kind of track over the you could say the middle of the foot when it goes into that bend. It could also just look like the pelvis dumping forward, the spine dumping forward. And what all of those things are, it's the system solving for that lack of movement at the tibia. So in his case, it wasn't that obvious. Like you couldn't really see that going on in all the clips now. He's got that tibial IR, so it's quite obvious to see that the knee can track forward, the tibia internally rotates, and when you do that individual test of tibial IR, it's successful. We then had that nice KPI when we were training, and it was pretty instantaneous. So I would say we did 12 months plus of getting him stronger in the legs. Like we were focusing on other stuff, building his strength in his upper body. But 12 to 24 months, he had that chronic patellar tendinopathy until we unlocked the real reason, and I got better at understanding his body and bodies in general. We were failing for that long, which is kind of hard to admit, but that is part of this learning process. You have to accept your failures, and that's a good thing to move forward. This is my kind of combo and depth of why most rehabs fail, how we can level up, and how we can get better outcomes. You need to assess how the system is behaving as a whole. So with this case, we've solved that tibial IR, improved the symptoms of the pain on that right side, and we can move him forward. That's all down to this good quality assessment and then good interventions, exercise selections, to drive that internal rotation at the tibia, and then challenge him to maintain it at higher and higher level activities, so then he can get back to running. So just creating that relative motion is great, but then you need to challenge him and add intensity over time in a strategic way, whilst retesting that he can still maintain those physical qualities of relative motion between the tibia and the femur over time whilst you add that intensity. If you can't do that, then you need to take a step back, reassess, and that's why you need to always retest after every single intervention to see what actual changes you are putting on that system and adjusting on the body. That was why most rehabs fail. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening.